All right, good morning or good afternoon, depending on what part of the world you're in. This is Dan Ripke with the Educational Association of University Centers. Welcome to our monthly webinar call. So we have a great lineup this week, and as well as we're preparing for our annual conference that's coming up in March. So in terms of going over the agenda, we have myself and Larry Molnar to speak from the association, and then we will be having Bernadette going over some updates from the EDA. And then we have a great presentation coming on the Opportunity Zone Mapping Tool. So, Bernadette, you want to, there we go. So, Larry, did you want to cover this slide or do you want me to cover it?
I'm not sure what's on it because I'm on the phone, so why don't you cover it and then turn it over to me for a minute. I have a few announcements.
Okay, sure. So in terms of the updates from EAUC, for those who were on the call back in November, we had mentioned that we were bringing back the association along with its membership dues. The association will, in terms of benefits, will include both a newsletter with news as well as legislative updates of what's happening with the EDA program, as well as what's happening with other funding for universities. We'll have a website with members-only content, and then we will also be having our annual conference that will be coming up in the middle of March, and there'll be a discount for those members who are paid members for the association. So look for an email coming for either myself or from Larry Molnar with more details about becoming a member. The target price we have right now for membership is $325, which is quite a bit lower than the about $1,200 that used to be the membership in previous decades. So, so that's coming up. Look for that in your email. And then the big news is we've got confirmed dates for the Educational Association of University Center annual conference in Washington, D.C. We'll be hosting it at the Hilton Garden Inn in Crystal City on March 15th through the 17th. So we'll be starting on the evening of the 15th with a reception for people that fly in on Sunday evening. We'll have speakers all day on the 16th there in Crystal City. That evening, we're going to be hosting a joint reception with NATO, the National Association of Development Organizations, that will be meeting with our federal partners, various organizations that both NATO as well as EAUC work with regularly. And then on the 17th, we'll have a half-day session with I know quite a few people have requested being able to have some time to go up on the Hill and visit with elected officials and committee members. So that's the current draft agenda. We're pulling together the speakers right now. And so if you have speakers or topics that you would really like to hear, please send that information to myself. The last slide will have my contact information, both my email and my phone, if you want to send me ideas or suggestions for content that you would like to see at this year's conference. And Larry, let me turn it over to you.
Okay, just quickly, Dan just covered the upcoming annual conference in Washington, D.C. We did not schedule it last year because of the transition of the organization from the East Coast to the West Coast, if you will, but we already have started on the program. I know that we're going to have a report from some university government relations officers, which we usually do on Monday morning. That should be very interesting. A lot of interesting things going on in Washington, as I'm sure you know. We'll have a number of agencies. We're already in contact with some of them. Obviously, EDA will be a participant. NATO is having their meeting at the same time we are, and they've invited us to a networking session on Monday, late afternoon and early evening, where federal agencies will be there. So that should be a very beneficial event. There'll be panels, EDA University Centers. There'll be a couple interesting keynotes that we're lining up. The Congress is on recess that week, which means that the staff will be much more available. So we're going to try to get some staffers from key committees across the river to meet with us. and hopefully we can learn things from them. I guess the final thing would be that the EAUC board, we're going to put it up for nominations. There are some spots we want to fill, and some people may not choose to run again. I may very well be one of them. I've been president probably much longer than I should have been. But we'll be getting nomination forms out, but it's not a real formal process. If you have somebody or yourself that you'd like to nominate, you can go to Dan for that, or the eauc.org, our website, what have you, and just get the information in, and Dan will be collecting that. So I think this is going to be a really great conference. I think it's going to be very content rich, and I think that you'll come away from it having learned a lot more about what's going on in Washington and what the opportunities are. So Dan, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Larry. So Bernadette, and Larry, you weren't aware, but we have a slide up on the screen, which is basically a list of some of the partners that we've had in the past, which includes both Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, NIST, Department of Defense, USDA, National Science Foundation, and a handful of others, as well as a lot of the private think tanks that we've worked with in the past, so including the Brookings Institute. So Bernadette, let me switch it over to you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions that came in from some of the participants, so I figured this was probably a great time to answer it while we're fresh in our it's fresh in our minds. The first question is regarding EAU membership and if it's by university center or individual. So I'm hoping that one of you can speak to that.
This is Larry, and I'll go ahead and speak to that. I think the way we've traditionally done it in the past is a membership will cover an individual, and 2 additional persons from that institution can also be members under the membership. That really is a institutional membership. So a primary member and then 2 that can be named, and that falls under a 1 membership due.
Great, thank you. Another question is regarding the hotel information for the conference so that folks can put in their travel requests. I think that maybe we can just send that out afterwards to the whole group. That might be the easiest way to get that done.
Correct, yeah, we do have a discount. We do have a discounted hotel rate. They're creating the link right now for me, and then I'll shoot it out to all the folks who are on this call, as well as people that might want to attend. So we are getting a very good discounted hotel rate for the week.
And there's a save the date, a little announcement, and I imagine, Dan, all that information will be on that save the date thing that you should see within a few days, actually.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. If anyone else has any questions regarding EAUC membership or the conference, feel free to type them in the Q&A box and we can address those at the end. Otherwise, you can feel free to email Dan directly and he'll get back to you as soon as he's able to. So in the meantime, I'm just gonna keep moving forward. Just a couple of reminders just about EDA and kind of where we're at right now and some of our priorities. I'm hoping that you all have been made aware of the recent FY19 disaster supplemental NOFO that went out. This is the 2nd year in a row that we've received a large supplemental funding of $587 million made available for grants. So there's details on the screen, and there's more information available on our website, and the links will be in the slides that we send out after this webinar. But those, there is money available, and we just want to make sure that everybody is aware of this and that you would be applying to your local regional office. So please make sure your communities are aware of this funding. It's for technical assistance and implementation. So I mean, there are many options for how this can be used, and we really want to make sure that we're getting this funding out into the communities that need it. So it's just a friendly reminder about the disaster NOFOs. And then also, you all know that there's been a huge emphasis on opportunity zones and how EDA can support work being done and investment, private investment in opportunity zones. So we actually are trying to make our funding even more available. We're working in distressed communities already, and many of these opportunity zones align with the distressed communities that we've been working in. So we just want folks to be aware that in as much as you're working in opportunity zones or your communities have worked in opportunity zones, whether that be planning or implementation, that's something that we want to be telling the story for. So that's a key priority for us right now, and what has kind of influenced the focus of today's webinar. So I'm just going to keep moving forward. We have a special guest today. Carol Rogers is here with us, and she is the brains behind the Stats America tool that has just houses so many amazing tools that I know many of you have already used, but I'm hoping that you all will learn something new today as Carol walks us through some of the new features that have been added and that we're continuing to work on. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Carol.
Okay, thank you so much, Bernadette, and good afternoon, everyone. If you're already in a warm part of the country, lucky you. If you're in the colder part of the country like I am, stay warm as you watch your computer monitors today. I think most of you are familiar with Stats America. I know I met a number of university centers at the EDA regional meeting in Denver just this past summer, where Bernadette and I had given a presentation together. And hopefully you find it useful. If you're not familiar with it, now may be a good time to use it, especially since we released a couple of new tools just over the past few months. One was the Regionizer. It's a fun tool where you can highlight counties and go across state borders. So if any of you are serving areas where you've got some counties in this state and some counties in that state, with the Regionizer, you're able to just click and drag to select however many you want and actually get some basic commuting and demographic and industry data back. We'd love feedback from you on that tool. But most recently, we released the USA Opportunity Zone tool, and I would like to thank Bernadette and Ryan and others in the RNTA group at EDA for all of their assistance and collaboration on this tool. We got it done pretty quickly. It may not have seemed that way, Bernadette, at the time, but it was pretty quick. Got a lot of input from people, particularly in EDA and in certain types of positions in economic development, but we really are wide open right now for feedback. The USA Opportunity Zone tool, if you want to go ahead and move to the next slide, Bernadette, we're going to focus on that this afternoon so I can fill you in on why it works the way it does, what we think is good functionality over the web that is device friendly, and also to show that what we're trying to do here is really reveal to people the fact that EDA focuses on distressed communities throughout America. It's been part of its remit. I actually don't know how long it's been part of your remit, Bernadette, but at least since the 80s.
That sounds about right, at least, yeah.
Yeah, for some reason, like 84 or 85 sticks in my mind. So now we're going to have to go, well, somebody can Google it while we're doing the demo and let us know. But at the heart of so much of what EDA does is to provide economic development support monies and technical assistance, as well as the revolving loan funds and many other initiatives that will help communities basically grow and thrive. ones that are experiencing distress for a whole lot of reasons. And certainly looking at the economy over the past 20 years affords all of us in universities, certainly, with probably lots of faculty who are doing research on what happened during the recession and how many people have actually been able, how many communities have been able to come back from that trough that occurred to probably most of us in 2008 and 2009. So long story short, we want to show the intersection of the Economic Development Administration investments and programs with the new opportunity zones that have been designated across the country. And there are about 8,500 of these zones nationwide. And this also includes the territories. And they intersect with most of our economic development. Oh, look how I called it ours. We work so closely with economic development districts, with the economic development districts across the country. And I assume that most of the university centers are also working with those districts. And then we have some eye candy here to make the page pop, but a lot of what we're saying there is pretty much what I said in a nutshell. So we can go to the next slide and actually see that we have a map. We're using Leaflet for this, which is powered in terms of its base map with Esri. And just a basic map, we're trying to keep it relatively plain so that it's easily viewable on any size device that someone might have, and also in any kind of lighting situation. I zoomed in here on this example slide on Missouri and Kansas, and showing up their individual districts here. The opportunity zones are highlighted blue, and I suspect most of you know this by now, that they are based on census tracts. And Bernadette, somebody raised their hand. Do you let me know if you want me to pause for a question?
If folks can just type their questions into the Q&A box, we'll answer them that way. So
okay.
I don't see a raised hand on my side, so maybe it was just, I don't know. Keep going.
Okay. So one of the things that we wanted to do, besides show the intersection with the opportunity zone of EDA investments, was also to put some context around the opportunity zone by showing which congressional district the zone is in, which economic development district, the state, the EDA region, and then we also describe where we're getting the data from and have a set of more resources. And I'll be showing examples of it shortly with an online demo. So as we zoom into an area, for example, I zoomed in here on St. Louis, so that as you zoom in tighter, you begin to see actual town names, city names, you begin to get an understanding of the features, and you can zoom in even further to a specific tract and actually see the street layer under it if you need to. For a lot of people, this level of zoom is probably enough. One of the things with the congressional districts is that you're able to actually click on a layer, and I'll show you how to do that when we go online, and actually pull up the congressional districts so they appear with the zones as well as the economic development districts. And so when we turn on the EDD layer, it provides a yellow highlighting for where all of those are. And we also provide the boundaries for those economic development districts. And you can see across the country what the coverage is. And I'm always a little embarrassed, Bernadette, that Indiana doesn't have complete coverage of economic development.
So we all work towards.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we also show information about other units, and I think you can kind of get through the next couple pretty quickly, and then we'll go online. So yeah, just showing examples here, and then showing you the actual data that you can get for each of those geographic areas. So you can get it for the zone, for the Economic Development District, the Congressional District. Each geography has a similar set of data metrics. Obviously, their geography is going to be different. And so this gives you an idea of the specific metrics. And when we go online, I'll go and actually show you that. So I think we're probably ready for me to take over, Bernadette.
All right, I've stopped sharing, so you should be able to take over.
Okie doke. So I'm going to flip over now to my desktop, and hopefully you can confirm for me, Bernadette. What do you see?
I see South America.
Okay, brilliant, wonderful. And so you can see all the tools here. I'm just going to jump right into the Opportunity Zone tool. We do have a landing page or a splash page for this, so people who are new to it can get an idea of why we are doing this, because there are specific reasons and specific audiences for it. Lots of folks have been pushing out Opportunity Zone maps or mapping tools. Multiple federal agencies have done that so far, and many of them are more or less just maps. Some go further than that. I know EIG has a really nice map tool that they have, but they're also collecting information, which I think is great. They're collecting information on the Opportunity Zone funds that are being developed, and that's going to be a critical piece of information for localities. And it's possible we may be able to collaborate with them and actually share that data. That'd be nice. We do encourage people to go to the CDFI website so that they can actually, and I'm going to go ahead and click on it, so that they can go there and find out what CDFI is and actually go to the Opportunity Zone data and actually go to the official listing of Opportunity Zones. If I were an investor, I would want to make sure I checked with the IRS, that I have the right tract number for my area. So all I need to do is just click on Access the Opportunity Zone. The map pops up, and as you hover over the map, even before you zoom in, we have a short pop-up that gives you the information about what town that tract is in. It gives the full tract number, so it's the state ID, the county, and the tract number together. How large the place is, the unemployment rate, and their per capita money income. I mentioned earlier that you can add layers to the map, and so this gives us a nice understanding of Opportunity Zone coverage across the country. And many of our southern states and far our New England states have complete coverage within their state, and many states do not. I don't know if you have an actual number on that, Bernadette, in terms of the coverage, but it's pretty simple to see here, and it may be that we could start a program. Maybe the university centers could start up a program to assist areas if they are in a state where they don't have economic development districts. For example,
that's a great idea.
Yeah. So, get a target. Well, you gave me the idea when you said I should encourage Indiana to get their act together and get these, because it's a great thing to do. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on a census tract. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the EVDs and put on the congressional districts so that you can see how that intersects. And I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in on Kansas. And I'm going to put my little mouse hand on an Opportunity Zone, and then scroll down so so that I can see that it's Lane County, Kansas, and what the nearest city is, and it may actually be in that city. Nearest may be also located in, and it gives the track number. So that's kind of always our lodestone there, the track number. I find out that it's got about 1,700 people, about 700 square miles. It has a relatively small labor force, but it's about half the population, which is usually, as a rule of thumb, you want to see at least half your population in the labor force. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Their participation rate is actually pretty significantly high, 66. That's actually higher than the U.S. rate. Unemployment is low, and the poverty rate is hovering around 11% at this time. So we also indicate that it's part of the Economic Development District, Great Plains Development, and that the closest university center is Kansas State University. Now, here's something that I broached with you yesterday, Bridget. We were talking about this briefly, and what I want to mention is that we are calculating the distance based on the address of the state university and the center point of the opportunity zone. In some cases, there may be a university that's closer, but it's likely not the university center, the EDA designated university center. So if anybody has any comments about that, let us know, because, you know, Bernadette, we got that question the other day from folks at NATO. And the person, the user, thought that we should have been highlighting the closest university. And
right. So for clarification here, I think it's important to understand that the subheading is U.S. Economic Development Administration. So here we're talking about U.S. EDA resources that are available near this opportunity zone specifically, or relative to this opportunity zone specifically. So we're talking about a university center because this is an EDA funded university center, and this could be a resource for that particular opportunity zone. It might not, but it might be, and that's something that we wanted to highlight as an EDA investment that we have already deployed somewhere in that general area. So even though it's 217 miles away, it is the nearest U.S. EDA University Center. And there's a link that says learn more, because that link will take you to, does that link take them to EDA's page, Carol, or the University Center website that we have on file?
It goes to the University Center page on your website.
Okay, yes, so that will take folks to EDA's UC webpage, which, as I've talked about a couple of times before, for those who have been on these webinars in the past, I'm working on updating so that every university center is represented on our webpage, and so I'm hoping that I can get everyone's correct website and you know, general information, success stories, all of that, so that when there are people who go to a tool such as this and they're interested in learning more about that particular university center, they can easily find that information, which provides more exposure for the university center, but also for EDA resources. So I just wanted to point that out. And what Carol just showed is important as well. All these blue dots are the layer on this map, which shows the U.S. EDA University Center, so that people can see at a glance where the UCs are across the United States. So if people have any questions about that, or thoughts, comments, anything, I mean, we definitely want to hear that. I know Carol will be talking a little bit more about feedback as well. So I just wanted to make that point. So back to you, Carol.
Okay, well, thanks, Bernadette. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I think that one of the things that we can do, we're always trying to be careful on Stats America to keep it easy. Since we built this starting back in the mid-2000s, probably the thing that people tell us the most often as we get feedback or do focus groups or do surveys of people who are using the site is that it's easy to use, it's understandable, and they find what they want. And if they don't find what they want, they also find us very responsive. So we get emails from people frequently asking questions about Stats America or asking us to answer. I am thinking we tend to be really spare in our descriptions of things on Stats America, but I think, Bernadette, we need to say either EDA University Centers or US EDA University Centers.
I agree. That's a good addition. Yeah,
and then do the same thing down here, the closest EDA, even though we say that here. And I'll go ahead and show you what page it gets to. So right now, as Bernadette said, it's going straight to the University Center page on their website. And what we'd like to do is be able to have a link on the Opportunity Zone page here where we would actually link to your University Center website. So if all the university centers have a web page that says we're a university center and here's what we do, we could link to that there.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's something else that you guys can think about. We also pulled in information on whether or not the tract is part of a HUD low-income housing tax credit census tract or an SBA hub zone tract, and we're matching it against the files that the SBA makes available publicly on their website. We do indicate, though, that users need to verify these official program participation indications with the actual, with HUD, for example. And if I were an Opportunity Zone investor, I would certainly expect my accountant or the fund manager to ensure that the census tract that I think is an Opportunity Zone is actually a qualified Opportunity Zone, which is not to say we got these map base layers, the shapefiles from the IRS, and that's what we're using. We are keeping up with whether or not they're making any changes or corrections to it. But never a bad idea to trust but verify. So we also are providing people with what we hope are some good metrics. How young or old is that Opportunity Zone? How educated is it? And also in the county that it's located in, how do they measure up in terms of the innovation scores that they can get from the Innovation Index? And what is their industry mix like? So are they heavy on manufacturing? In this case, they're heavy on trade, transportation, utilities. Those are the kinds of jobs they have there, as well as educational services, and also mining and construction. And so not necessarily any surprises, except maybe they don't have any manufacturing there, but keep in mind that Kansas is a big place. So interesting. We can also then look at the Congressional District. So they're in Congressional District 1 in Kansas. So they're number 1 in Congressional District. We show for the CD how many Opportunity Zones are actually in that Congressional District, and they can actually download the Oz list that has these metrics with it. Obviously, it's going to show a lot more activity around EDA investments because you're going to have a lot of EDDs EDDs, only 2 Ds in that. A lot of them, when you start getting to that congressional district side. Because I think congressional districts are somewhere around 385,000 people. Let's see. Well, this one is 101,000 for that congressional district. We again show the innovation index data, and I suspect that many of your congressional staffers in your states, the people who work in the congressperson's office, they might be happy to hear from you from your university center, and I suspect you could use this data, especially if you engage with the staffers. Let us know if that's helpful to you. We do the same thing with the EDD. We also indicate which counties make up the EDD. We're not showing parts of counties. We are aware that some EDDs split counties, but we're not able, we haven't gotten to a point where anybody's really happy with either excluding the county, which we don't do, or with trying to apportion half of a county to one district over another. So we just use the whole county in the definition. At this point, folks are able to download the most recent SEDS for the Economic Development District. And Bridget, I don't know if you want to say some more about that.
Yeah, sure. So we've been doing a lot of work over the last year to update and refine and make sure that the SEDS resource library, another fantastic tool in Stats America, is as up to date as possible and is as useful as possible, not only for our economic development districts, but for all of our communities, because this is a valuable resource. I mean, any application that your community and that any town government or other entity is applying for EDA funding needs to link that project to the SEDS where one exists. And so these SEDS can be really valuable resources in terms of reference, but also making sure that you're aligning your goals with the larger regional development goals. So these SEDS are now made easily accessible in the Opportunity Zone tool, which is a really great feature that we've recently added as we've been working on this tool. So I'm hoping that you will find this to be helpful as well, with everything being consolidated into one. You're also welcome to check out the SEDS resource library, where you can find the most recent SEDS there as well, where one does exist. So as Carol has been talking about, we're trying to make sure that this tool is useful for our communities who are going to be using them. So we are interested in understanding how you all as university centers might find this tool useful as well. And if you have any recommendations for us and how we can make this more user-friendly, more understandable, more applicable, we are open to that, and we absolutely need that feedback. You're working really closely with your regions and your communities, and so we're eager to kind of get your feedback and your expertise wherever we can.
Well, and actually, Bernadette, I think it was yesterday, Riley on our staff sent emails to each of the university centers, to the contact person, and asking them to consider joining us in a focus group about the Opportunity Zone tool. So there may be many people on the call this afternoon who've already heard from our office, inviting them to help us understand how we can, where this tool is successful and where we can improve it. And I think from what Tim was telling me just a little while ago, we got quite a few responses so far. So thank you to all of you who have responded to that. We really appreciate it. Many heads make for creative solutions. It used to be light work, but I think many creative heads usually make more work, don't they? So, excuse me. I'm looking at the state opportunity zone profile. And again, what's really handy about this, and you're not going to find it on other opportunity zone tools that are out there today, is that I can find out how many people in Kansas are living in an opportunity zone in that whole state. I can find out about the labor force participation rate and a variety of things. Again, you can download the Oz list to look at all 74 opportunity zones that are in Kansas, if that's what you're interested in. And because it's a state profile, we also link directly to each state's opportunity zone webpage. Almost all of them have a web area now dedicated to opportunity zones, and to help them, for example, this one does, this is one of the nicer, more robust ones, for investors, for communities. They've got a toolkit that people can use, and so it makes it really handy. That's another reason that something that the university centers can think about, if there are some resources that you currently provide, make that known, and then let Bernadette know the web address for your university center, and we can hook that up on these pages as well. So we talk about how many economic development districts there are in Kansas, and in this case it covers 91% of all the counties. We currently say there are no grants. We need to rephrase this, Bernadette. That there are no grants currently in Kansas, and I think there's an issue where we probably have the most recent grants.
Okay.
And we might want to say that within the past 5 years, because that might be a little bit misleading. And there may be some grants that were issued that had a duration of 2 or 3 years, but they weren't in that current list. Just a thought, or we can kind of rephrase it, because I think it might be a little bit misleading. You know, that's one of the things when you pull stuff out of the database, when it's a database power thing, it's not customized. It's got to do one job. It has to tell you whether or not there are EDA grants in this particular X geography or not. You know, computers are binary. It's either a 0 or 1. And that's what we're bumping into here. So that's what we've got there, and we also provide a link there on the state page to EDA's Economic Development Directory for Kansas. So each of the states then have a direct link to EDA's state-specific page, which again makes it easier to find, for example, what resources are available, including the university centers. So the last profile that we have is actually for the Economic Development Administration's regions. So there are 6 of them. I'm looking at the Denver regional office right now. And actually, it very handily tells me which states the Denver office covers. And if I was looking at a different state, say on the East Coast, it would tell me about that office's regions. Or if I was looking at Georgia, and it would show me the states the Atlanta regional office does. So that's just kind of handy. And I think the EDA people are probably going to get a kick out of always having current data about their land area and whatnot. So some of the things that you might want to consider is what could make this tool useful to you in your work, in your areas that you serve with your university center. We also described where we got the data, and we actually got it from the Department of Treasury, from their financial institutions website. They're the ones that issued the initial designations. We also took the Congressional District shapefiles from the Census Bureau. And then, of course, we're getting the data on the boundaries for the districts and the regional offices from Bernadette and her colleagues at EDA. And then we indicate all of the data sources that we use. Probably what's fun, and what I'd like to see us really keep our attention going on updating this page, all of the resources that folks can go to around opportunity zones. All of these are specific to opportunity zones, and we're also including non-federal resources. And I think I mentioned the EIG group, Economic Innovation Group, earlier, and they're trying to track literally what's happening in the zones. And that's going to be a labor-intensive task, but I'm glad to see that they're going to keep up with that. So I just wanted to mention that we're not likely, I don't think, to try to do that. As I say, it's going to be pretty labor-intensive, and hopefully they are working with a number of investment firms that are setting up those funds. And EIG Group is actually located in DC. And I think they have connections, and their focus of work is going to give them faster access to the actual fund information. Our goal is really to show where public investments, particularly EDA public investments, are intersecting with these opportunities. So
thank you so much, Carol. No, that was fantastic. I think you've covered everything, all of the key features of this tool. We had we had one question that came in and one comment, but I just want to let folks know we have 8 minutes left, and so please feel free to type any questions you have into the question and answer box. If we can answer them now, I'd love to. Otherwise, we can definitely keep this conversation going via email after. But really quickly, Carol, we have one question about the tool itself and how to use the data in this tool. So can the results of using this tool be used in a congressional hearing testimony? And how would you want the results from this tool cited to congressional staff? And so I think that you might be able to speak to how this data might be used.
There would be no problem at all with these data being used in a congressional hearing. I think we have stated on the website the caveats. We are using predominantly federal data that is powering this tool, and I think it would be supported by those federal agencies who would also be able to attest to the accuracy of it. You know, we're only going to be as good as our sources. But yeah, I don't see any issue with that. The way that I would cite the tool is listed at the bottom of the web page, and I would indicate that it is a tool on Staff America, which is a service of the IBRC at Indiana University, and that it is funded in part by the US EDA. So that would be the citation. So hopefully that helps.
And all of the sources of the data are included throughout the reports. There's links to where all the data has been found. So if you wanted to get more granular, you're welcome to drill down for that as well. So somebody actually said that they're thinking they could turn this information into a presentation to share with their community partners. And I think that is a fantastic use of this tool, and I love hearing that. So I'd be kind of eager to see what that looks like and how that works. If you have any suggestions or best practices for that after turning this into a presentation, that's exciting to hear.
Yeah, it'd be really easy to do screenshots. You could also save it out in its HTML format and then pull it into a PowerPoint slide deck. And also one of the things that we wanted to mention today is that if any of you need an extract of the data for the opportunity zones in your district, or even if you just want us to extract, we could create some kind of extract. A lot of this stuff is occurring on the fly. We could provide you with a database extract of the data. Because I suspect some of you might want to do some comparative analysis.
Yeah, I think that's helpful to know, and people should feel free to use, Carol, if you can scroll up to the top of the page. There's a contact and feedback button up there. You should take advantage of those. IBRC, where Carol is working, is very responsive. So if you have any questions on how to use the data, or if you're looking for reports or anything, they'd be happy to help you out. Somebody has a specific question actually about Puerto Rico, and if there's any information you can share about that.
We are going to be adding Puerto Rico data, but it took us a little bit longer than we had expected to be able to get all of the data to be consistent with what we needed. Now you can actually go in and zoom to Puerto Rico, and we are showing some data. And we are actually showing, okay, so there's Bernadette, we got it mostly done. You'll notice
mostly done, except for some of the, yeah.
Right, we don't have the county or the municipio, which I think I mispronounced, data. So that's what we're working on. So some of this is usable. Certainly the map tool is usable. Let's see if the congressional, yeah, so we don't have data about this. So some of these pieces aren't available, just the opportunity zone at this point. But we will have verified all of this data. And it looks to me as if essentially every census tract is showing up as an opportunity zone. But it may be that we're just showing the demographic data right now. So stay tuned.
Okay. And similarly, a question on how often the map and the data will be updated in its entirety.
Oh, and that's a perfect question. I always like questions like that. It will be updated as soon as we get additional data from the American Community Survey. And we're actually, and I think I'll zip out to a different opportunity zone at this point. At this point, we will be adding the 2018 American Community Survey data. Our process should be completely done by the end of this month. We actually held off, Bernadette. Remember, we were going through that cycle, but we're going to need to be able to delay or turn off the site over the weekend before the public release. We opted to go for public release and then update to the 2018 data. With the opportunity zone, economic development districts, university centers, any of these, it'll be updated as soon as the source provides it to us. Typically going to be annual.
Thank you so much. It is 3:59, so I'm going to take that control from you. So, sorry. Okay, so here is Carol's email address, rogersc@iu.edu. If anyone has any questions about this tool or the data, feel free to reach out to her if you have any feedback. She would love to hear it. And lastly, the recording for this webinar and the slides will be posted on EDA's University Center website within the next 2 weeks. My goal is within the week, but I want to give myself a little bit of a buffer, so be patient with me, please. So stay tuned for that. Dan, if you wanted to speak to any other reminders regarding the EAUC? Okay, EAUC, the spring meeting, as he said, is going to be in DC in March. So he will be sending out an email with more information and a save the date about that. His email address is dripke, R-I-P-K-E, @eauc.org if you wanted to reach out to him directly. And our next webinar will be Wednesday, March 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern instead of the normal 3 p.m. Eastern. So we will be sending out more information about that within the next month, but please mark that down on your calendars. The next webinar will be focusing on EDA's new metrics and how we're collecting our data. So I'm sure you will all be interested to hear more about that, as we've been doing some teasers over the last year for that. So stay tuned for that, but thank you all so much for joining. I hope you learned something new about the Opportunity Zone tool, and we'll take some time to play with it and provide any feedback or comments you have either to myself or Carol or directly through the site. Again, thank you, and we will see you in a couple of months.